The house was silent until the scream tore through it. A sharp, guttural cry, not of pain, but of something worse. Grief. Michael slumped in the doorway of his daughter's home, his army coat still soaked from the rain. His trembling hands clutched a folded letter stained at the corners. Eyes wide, haunted. Emily stood frozen by the stairwell, her husband behind her, both shocked to see the man they had buried in memory return like a ghost. "I told you never to come here," Emily whispered. Her voice cracked under the weight of betrayal. Michael looked at her, lips quivering, then simply collapsed to his knees. The letter slipped from his hand. A photo fluttered out. A young girl in a sundress holding a flag. Emily. The room didn't move. No one breathed. Time held its breath. Michael gasped. I never stopped writing. But the ink was already running off the page. Emily didn't move. Her heart pounded against her ribs, each beat a memory slamming against bone. She remembered the driveway, 10 years old, standing with that flag in her hand as her father left without a word. He never came back. Not to her birthdays. Not to her graduation. Not when she married. And now here he was, uninvited, unannounced, unspoken for. "You don't get to do this," Emily said, her voice cold and trembling. Michael remained on his knees, too proud to beg, too shattered to stand. "I was told. You moved," he said, the lie choking out of him. The room felt like glass, one breath too loud, and it would all shatter. Emily stepped forward, each footstep echoing betrayal. She picked up the photo with trembling fingers. Her younger self smiled back. A smile that had waited too long. A smile that now felt like mockery. Michael's hand reached out not to touch her, but to plead without words. She flinched. Every inch between them was a wound unhealed. "You wrote?" Emily asked, eyes locked on him. Michael nodded. "Every month, for years, they said you refused them." Emily's laugh wasn't a laugh. It was a bark of disbelief, sharp and bitter. "You think you can drop a lie on my doorstep and it'll undo everything." Her voice cracked but didn't break. Michael looked at the floor. "I didn't know how to come back. The war ended, but the battle didn't." Silence pressed in again. Emily held the photo closer, inspecting her younger self's eyes. "You gave up. You left me fighting alone." That was the real truth. Not abandonment. Not letters. But the choice not to fight for her. Michael whispered, "I was ashamed." Emily turned to the side, pacing a few steps. Her bare feet against the hardwood seemed to echo louder than anything said. "Ashamed?" she asked. "Do you know what shame is? Shame is sitting alone at your school recital and pretending your father's just late. Shame is telling your own child, you don't know what a grandparent feels like." Her voice cracked, but it rose again. "Shame is wishing the man who left would come back, and hating yourself when he does." Michael bowed his head, shoulders sagging. The weight of decades, mistakes, silence, it all pressed on him like gravity. Emily glanced back over her shoulder, the photo now crumpled in her palm. "You don't get to be sorry, not when it's convenient, not after you buried yourself alive." Michael slowly stood, his knees stiff and painful, but his resolve clearer. He looked not at Emily, but past her, at the hallway full of photos he was never in. "I'm not here for forgiveness," he said. "I just wanted you to know. I never stopped being your father, even when I failed at it." Emily's lip trembled. The fury inside her had been armor for so long, too long. But it cracked now, not from his words but from the truth she saw in his eyes. A man who had carried guilt like a wound stitched with silence. A man who didn't come to be redeemed, only remembered. She didn't reply. Couldn't. She looked down the hall, where a picture of her and her son hung crooked. Then slowly, almost involuntarily, she whispered, "He's 7. It wasn't a truce. But it was the beginning of something. Maybe a new letter. The silence after Emily's whisper was longer than any scream. Michael shifted his gaze to her but said nothing. He didn't know if he had the right. Her husband, Daniel, stepped forward at last. "Why now?" he asked, arms crossed, voice protective, suspicious. Michael looked him in the eyes, not defensive, just tired. "Because I'm dying," he said flatly. Emily's breath hitched. Not because she hadn't expected it, but because hearing it broke the illusion of endless time. Lung fibrosis, Agent Orange. The weight of his confession wasn't just in the words, but in the hollowness that followed them. "I didn't come to make peace. I came because you should know, before I vanish completely." Daniel looked to Emily, unsure. She blinked quickly, shaking the tears away like shame. "You're late," she said. Michael nodded. "I know." And it sounded like the first honest thing he'd said in decades. That night, Emily sat alone in the living room, arms wrapped around her knees like she had as a child. The house was quiet, but inside her mind, echoes roared. She remembered a time when the mailman meant hope. When she'd rushed to the box expecting a postcard, a letter, something. But the mailbox stayed empty. Week after week, year after year, lies had filled the space where trust should have grown. She whispered to no one, "I waited so long." The tears finally came, not loud, not messy, just quiet rivers down her cheeks. In the dimness, she held the faded photo again. Her smile in the image mocked her pain. She had once believed he'd return. That little girl had built shrines out of silence. And Emily, the woman, had spent a lifetime sweeping them up. "I don't want to feel this," she whispered. But the ache didn't care. Michael lay in the guest room, staring at the ceiling. He didn't recognize the sounds of domestic life anymore. The hum of a dishwasher, a soft toy rolling on hardwood, the whisper of a lullaby through paper-thin walls. He coughed hard, pain flaring in his ribs, but didn't call out. Some pains were deserved. On the dresser beside him sat a weathered shoebox filled with letters, all returned. Unopened. Unread. "They told me you were better off," he muttered to the ceiling. "That my silence would heal you." He chuckled dryly. What fools we were, thinking silence ever healed anything. He reached for the photo that had fallen earlier, now creased and worn. "You were the reason I stayed alive over there. And the reason I stayed silent after." He let the photo rest on his chest. "Coward," he whispered, to no one but himself. In the morning, Emily stood outside on the porch, wrapped in a sweater, coffee untouched in her hand. She watched the sun rise like she used to as a child, waiting for something to change. Her son Noah peeked through the door. "Who's the man?" he asked. She hesitated. The words tasted strange. "That's your grandfather." Noah's eyes lit up, not with recognition, but with the novelty of the word. "Can I talk to him?" Emily didn't answer right away. Her voice felt too full. "Maybe later," she finally said. But Noah was already darting down the hallway, giggling. Emily closed her eyes. The years had robbed her of answers, but her son still had questions. She wondered how much truth he deserved, and how much he could bear to tell. The porch creaked beneath her. A morning wind passed like a whisper. "It's not too late." Later that day, Noah crept into the guest room, dragging a toy airplane behind him. Michael stirred. "Hello," Noah said, without fear. "Are you the soldier?" Michael blinked, surprised. "I used to be," he rasped. Noah climbed onto the chair beside the bed, curiosity shining. "My mom said you were brave." Michael's lip quivered. Brave being tall. The word hadn't belonged to him in a long time. "She did?" Noah nodded. "She said, even if you hurt people, it takes courage to come back." Michael's chest tightened. "Your mom's smarter than me," he said. Noah reached into his hoodie and pulled out a crumpled drawing. "This is you, fighting the monsters." It was childish, beautiful, terribly hopeful. Michael looked at the paper like it was a second chance. And for the first time in years, he smiled. "Thank you, Private Noah," he whispered. Michael sat in the kitchen later that day, his hands wrapped around a steaming mug he wasn't drinking. The house buzzed with subtle life, Noah playing in another room, the soft clink of dishes being washed. Emily leaned against the counter, arms crossed, silent. "Why didn't you try harder?" she finally asked. Michael looked at her, his voice low. "I did, in all the wrong ways." He paused. "After the war I couldn't look people in the eye. I thought I was sparing you from that shame." Emily scoffed. "You weren't sparing me, you erased me." Her voice didn't rise, but it didn't need to. It cut. "Every time I asked where you were, Mom said you were healing, but I was the one bleeding." Michael nodded slowly. "She said you didn't want me." The words hung like smoke. Emily blinked, then whispered, "She lied to both of us." That evening, Emily sat on her bed with an old photo album cracked open beside her. She flipped through page after page, her childhood staged without him. Her mother's smile, her solo birthdays, her high school graduation, where an empty chair haunted the back row. She realized her memories had been edited, cropped, rewritten by silence. Her fingers stopped on a photo of her in uniform, army boots too big, face too proud. She had joined the service out of spite, out of longing, out of the need to fill the father-shaped hole inside her. "I became you," she murmured to the photo, "and I hated you for it." Her reflection in the window beside the bed looked older than it felt. "Maybe that's why I couldn't forgive myself either." The words startled her. Because they were true. And they weren't just about him anymore. In the garage, Michael wandered through boxes long untouched. Dust blanketed everything, his past, his regrets. He opened a rusted tin filled with medals, patches, and half-written letters. Each one addressed to Emily. Each one never sent. His hands trembled as he read the words he once wrote. "Today I saw a girl in a market who reminded me of you. She had your stare, sharp, proud, unforgiving." The ink had faded, but the emotion hadn't. He found an envelope dated the day her mother passed. "I wanted to come, but I didn't know if I'd make it worse." He slumped against the wall. He had been buried long before he was dying. His uniform still hung on a rack, the sleeves limp. He realized then, the only battlefield he truly lost was the one at home. Emily entered the garage without a word. She saw him on the floor, surrounded by papers, as if grief had spilled from every box. She picked up one letter, scanning it with quiet disbelief. "You wrote this, and never sent it?" Michael didn't look at her. "I thought you'd moved on." "No," she said, her voice low. I froze. "There's a difference." She looked around the garage. So many relics of a man she didn't know but had hated anyway. "You kept it all." He finally met her gaze. "I was a coward." Emily nodded, tears rising uninvited. "And I became hard, cold, the kind of mother who teaches her son how not to cry." She sat beside him, eyes on the letters. "Maybe we both lost the war." Michael placed one trembling hand over hers. "But we're still here." That counted for something. Later that night, Emily tucked Noah into bed. He clutched the drawing of Michael still tightly, proud. "He's gonna die, isn't he?" he asked suddenly. Emily froze, then nodded slowly. "Yes, baby, he's sick." Noah looked down. "Can we still love people even if they're leaving?" Emily kissed his forehead. "Especially then." She turned off the lamp and stood in the hallway, watching him fall asleep. Downstairs, she found Michael standing by the fireplace, staring at a photo of young Emily. "He asked about death," she said quietly. Michael turned, shadows playing across his tired face. "I faced death. It never scared me. But dying with nothing left to say, that's the worst kind." Emily exhaled. "Then don't wait." He nodded once. And for the first time she didn't see a soldier. She saw a man, flawed, failing, but finally fighting for something that mattered. Michael sat with Noah in the backyard, watching leaves fall in quiet spirals. "You know what scares me?" he asked the boy softly. "When people forget your name." Noah tilted his head. "But I won't forget." Michael smiled faintly. Good. That means I lived right in at least one small way. Emily stood in the doorway, listening. Later that evening, she rummaged through old boxes in the attic, trying to find her birth certificate for school paperwork. Instead, she found a folder marked Emily, private. Her brow furrowed. Inside was a sealed envelope from her mother, yellowed, fragile, but never opened. She almost tossed it aside. Almost. But something in her gut stopped her. With trembling hands, she slid her finger under the flap. The note inside was short, brutal. That. Michael tried. I kept the letters. I wanted you to hate him. I didn't want you to leave me too. Emily sat on her bed, the letter open on her lap. Her mother's handwriting stared back like a ghost. The betrayal was simple, deliberate. Her entire anger had been manufactured, fed like a fire in secret. Her mother, always so protective, had done something cruel in the name of love. Emily shook her head slowly, the tears silent, but they came. She remembered nights as a teen screaming at a bedroom wall, wishing Michael dead. Now she knew. He had written. He had tried. She had just never known. The grief that came wasn't for what happened, but for what didn't. All the moments stolen by someone who thought love meant control. She broke us, Emily whispered. She broke us and blamed the silence. The weight of her mother's absence shifted from sorrow to rage. Not the kind that screams. The kind that quietly rewrites history. The next morning, Emily approached Michael, letter in hand. He sat at the breakfast table, slowly buttering toast with trembling fingers. She laid the paper down in front of him. She lied to us both. Michael paused, the knife midair. He read the note without a word. His lips moved silently as he took in the final cruelty of a woman they both loved. I always thought she hated me, he murmured. Emily sat down across from him. She loved me, in a way that made her selfish. Michael nodded. She was scared. I was scared. And you were just caught. They stared at each other across decades of misunderstanding. I wasted so many years, he said, voice cracking. We both did, Emily replied, softer now. The silence that followed wasn't tense. It was tender. Two people who had finally found the same page, buried in a letter that should have come years earlier. Later that day, Michael stood outside with Noah again. The boy pointed to birds and clouds, blissfully unaware of the war being quietly buried behind him. Emily watched them from the window, her heart filled with something foreign. Peace, maybe. Or the start of it. That night, she sat with Michael in the living room. I want Noah to know you. While there's time. Michael nodded slowly. I won't fill the space I left. I know that. Emily looked at him, her eyes softer. You don't have to. Just don't disappear again. He reached out and placed a small worn pin in her hand, his military insignia. Give it to him someday, he said. When he's ready to understand. Emily closed her fingers around it. It was heavier than it looked. I think he already does, she whispered. Outside, a breeze moved the curtain like a sigh. That night, after everyone had gone to sleep, Michael wandered quietly into Noah's room. The boy slept soundly, arms wrapped around the drawing. Michael stood by the bed, emotion swimming in his eyes. I missed everything, he whispered. But maybe I still get to watch you grow for a little while. He placed a small pocket-sized journal on the nightstand. Inside were years of entries, unmailed letters written to a daughter who never got them. At the back were new ones, this time written for Noah. He leaned down and kissed the boy's forehead. You saved me, little soldier. As he stepped away, he paused at the door and looked back. In that silence he wasn't a broken man. He was a grandfather. Not perfect, not whole, but real. And for the first time, it was enough. Michael stood in front of the mirror that morning, staring at his reflection, as if seeing it for the first time. His skin sagged. His chest rattled. His medals meant nothing here. But behind him, through the open door, he heard laughter, Noah's. And it anchored him. Emily walked up behind him, holding a photograph. It was her and her mother at a county fair. Michael turned, slow and steady. "You look like her," he said. Emily nodded. "And I'm starting to understand her, even if I don't forgive her." They sat on the edge of the bed, photo between them. "She didn't trust you to love me enough," Emily said. "And I didn't trust myself to forgive you if you failed again." Michael didn't respond right away. Then softly, "Maybe I still will. Fail, I mean." Emily looked up, eyes damp. "Then fail near me this time." Later that afternoon, Michael sat on the porch wrapped in a knit blanket. Emily joined him, 2 mugs in hand. "It's colder today," she said. Michael chuckled lightly. "It's not the air. It's my bones remembering too much." They sat in silence. "The kind that didn't ache." "Do you think we become our parents?" Emily asked. "Only the broken parts," Michael said. She smiled bitterly. "Maybe it's time we build better ones." Michael nodded slowly, lifting the mug to his lips. "What do you think the first step is?" he asked. Emily turned her gaze to the backyard, where Noah played with paper airplanes. "Telling the truth, and letting it stay true even when it hurts." The sun dipped behind clouds, a soft gray light washing the porch. "You still have time," she added, "to tell him who you really were, and who you're trying to be now." That evening, Michael asked Noah if he wanted to hear a story before bed. Noah nodded eagerly and crawled under his blankets. "This one's about a soldier," Michael began, "who thought if he stayed quiet, the war inside him would stop." Noah's eyes widened. "Did it?" Michael shook his head. "No, it got louder," he continued, voice soft, carrying the weight of memory. "So, the soldier went far away, not because he didn't care, but because he thought his silence would protect the people he loved." Noah was quiet now, listening deeply. "But silence doesn't protect," Michael said. "It just hides things, and hiding makes people feel forgotten." He paused, then added, "That soldier was me." Noah crawled closer, small hand reaching out to touch his grandfather's. "I don't forget people," he said. Michael smiled. "Then you'll be a better man than I was." Emily stood in the hallway outside Noah's room, tears threatening as she listened to the story. She heard the regret in Michael's voice, but also something else. Honesty. And maybe healing. When he stepped out of the room, they faced each other in the dim hallway light. "Thank you," she said, "for telling him." Michael leaned against the wall, tired but lighter. "I didn't know if I deserved to be heard." Emily stepped forward. "You didn't, not at first. But now, you're earning it." She handed him the old letters, the ones she had once thrown away, now restored. "I read them," she said. "Every word." Michael took them slowly, his hands shaking. "I wrote them thinking I was talking to the past." Emily touched his arm. "Maybe you were, but I'm still here. And so is he." They stood in silence, nothing left to prove, only something left to share. That night, Michael couldn't sleep. He sat at the kitchen table, pen in hand, a fresh page before him. For once the words came easy. "To Noah," he wrote, "you asked me if people can still love each other even when they're leaving. I think that's the only time it matters most." His hand trembled, but the ink kept flowing. He wrote about mistakes, silence, fear, and how none of those were bigger than the decision to try again. "When you miss me," he wrote, "ask your mom to read this. She'll know when." A tear hit the paper, staining a word he didn't rewrite. That imperfection stayed. It felt honest. He signed it simply, Grandpa Michael, folded the letter, placed it in a box labeled, "For later." And as he turned off the light, he felt something lift from him. Not guilt, not sorrow, and just the weight of being finally understood. Michael's health declined over the following weeks. The walks became shorter, the coughs deeper. But something else had changed too. Noah's laughter was louder, Emily's voice softer, and Michael's presence felt less like a shadow and more like a homecoming. One morning, Michael helped Noah tie his shoes. Double knot. Noah grinned. Michael's hands were slow, shaky. But he got it. Like this? Noah nodded. Perfect. Emily watched from the doorway, blinking tears away before they spilled. For the first time, she saw a father, not the one she'd built in bitterness, but the one who showed up in quiet acts. He never did those things with me, she once told herself. But now, watching him with Noah, she realized something deeper. He was doing them now, not to erase the past, but to honor what had been lost. And sometimes, that's where healing begins. Emily found herself sorting the attic weeks later. She came across the uniform again, Michael's. This time, she didn't recoil. She unfolded it carefully, smoothing the sleeves, brushing away dust with her sleeve. Her fingers paused at the name stitched on the chest. Michael Owens. It looked smaller now, like the man had shrunk inside the fabric. But as she ran her hand across the fabric, she didn't see a soldier. She saw a father trying to come home. Later that evening, she brought it down and hung it beside the front door. When Michael saw it, his lips parted in surprise. Thought you might want to see it again, she said. He nodded slowly. I buried that uniform in silence. And you brought it back into light. Emily didn't answer. She didn't need to. Sometimes forgiveness wasn't loud. It was just visible. One crisp autumn day, they visited the cemetery together. Michael carried a single white rose, his breath short but steady. Emily held his arm. At her mother's grave they stood in silence. Michael placed the rose gently beside the headstone. You hurt us, he whispered. But I forgive you, because hating you won't give us back what we lost. Emily looked down, unsure of what to feel. Then slowly, she knelt beside the stone. I missed you, even when I hated you, she said. But I won't keep your silence alive anymore. She stood and reached for Michael's hand. He held it firmly, despite the tremor. The wind blew through the trees with a soft hiss, like a secret finally let go. They didn't cry. They didn't need to. What needed to be said had already echoed through generations. And now, finally, it was quiet. That evening, Noah climbed onto Michael's lap, a book in hand. Your turn to read, he said. Michael hesitated. His eyesight wasn't what it used to be, and his voice cracked often. But he smiled and opened the book anyway. Once upon a time, he began. Emily listened from the hallway, the sound of his voice layering over years of absence. He stumbled over words. Noah didn't mind. He rested his head on Michael's chest, listening more to the rhythm than the story. When the final page turned, Noah whispered, You read it perfect. Michael's eyes shone. I think it's the first bedtime story I've ever read. Emily stepped into the doorway. It won't be the last, she said. Michael looked up, his voice soft. I didn't think I'd get a second chance. Emily replied, You didn't. You made one. Later that night, Emily stood by the window staring into the darkness. Michael joined her wrapped in a blanket. You look like her when you do that, he said gently. I'm not her, Emily replied. I know, he whispered. You're better. She looked at him, eyes softer now. You're still leaving soon, aren't you? Michael nodded. Soon. But I'm not scared anymore. Emily reached for his hand. Because you said what needed saying? He shook his head. Because you heard it. Outside, the wind stirred the trees, and inside the silence was warm, not empty but full. You gave me something I never thought I'd have, he said. A quiet place to rest. Emily leaned against him, forehead to shoulder. You gave me something too, she said. The truth, finally. They stood like that, two broken people no longer trying to be whole, just trying to be present. Michael's breathing grew more shallow in the days that followed. He no longer left the bed, but his eyes were clear, his voice calm. Emily sat beside him with a notebook in her lap, taking down his stories. "You don't need to write it all," he murmured. "I want Noah to have more than a folded flag," she replied. He gave a slow nod. "Then write this. Tell him I was a man who got lost. Not because he didn't love, but because he didn't know how to come home." She paused her pen. "You came back." Michael smiled faintly. "Yes, but not alone. You brought me back." She reached out and squeezed his hand. He held it tighter than she expected. Outside, autumn leaves tapped gently against the window, like reminders that even things falling can be beautiful too. Noah entered the room quietly, crayon drawing in hand. "I made this," he said, holding it up. The picture showed Michael, Emily, and Noah standing under a tree. "It's our family tree," he said proudly. "You're the roots." Michael laughed, an airy, broken chuckle. "Roots. That's a good place to end up." Noah climbed beside him, laying the drawing on his chest. "Will you stay in the tree when you're gone?" Michael looked at him. "I'll be in the stories. That's better than being in the ground." Emily's throat tightened. "I'll remember," she whispered. Michael nodded. "Then I've done enough." Noah kissed his grandfather's cheek. "Night-night, soldier," he said. Michael's eyes shimmered. "Night-night, Captain." It wasn't just a goodbye. It was an inheritance. Of stories. Of love. Of pain turned into something softer. The next morning, Michael was gone. Peacefully. Shine? No struggle. No sound. Just breath that didn't return. Emily found him still holding Noah's drawing. She didn't cry at first. She just sat. Long enough for the sun to move across the floor. When Noah came in, he didn't ask questions. He simply crawled into the bed beside him. "I'll stay a little while," he whispered. Emily leaned against the doorframe, hand over her mouth, trying to be strong but failing, and finally letting go. The grief wasn't violent. It was still, steady, like rain soaking through the earth. Later that day, she lit a candle beside the old uniform and placed Michael's journal beside it. Noah placed a folded flag under the frame. Together, they created something not just to remember, but to continue. A legacy rethreaded with love, not silence. Weeks later, Emily stood before a classroom of children on Veterans Day. Noah sat in the front row, proud. She held up a photo, Michael in uniform, smiling with Noah on his lap. "This is my father," she said. "He was a soldier, but more importantly, he was a man who returned to us after a long time away." The room was silent. "Sometimes the bravest thing a person can do," she continued, "is admit they were wrong and try again." She placed the photo beside a stack of letters. "He taught me that silence isn't strength. Speaking, even when your voice shakes, that's real courage." The students leaned forward. Emily looked at Noah and smiled. "And he taught us to keep the story going. Because love is something you pass forward, not something you bury." The room didn't applaud. It just listened and remembered. That night, Noah asked his mom to read from Michael's journal. She opened it carefully, the pages soft with wear. "He wrote about his dreams," she said. "About the stars, about wanting to be better." Noah listened closely. "Was he scared?" he asked. Emily nodded. "Every day. But he didn't let that stop him at the end." Noah looked up. "Then, I want either." Emily smiled, heart aching and full all at once. She closed the book gently. "That's how we keep him alive," she said. "By becoming what he never got to be. Brave, and kind, and honest." Noah whispered, "He's in the roots, right?" Emily nodded, brushing his hair back. "And in the leaves, and in you." The wind stirred the trees outside. Quiet. Steady. Unseen, but always there. Just like the truth. Just like love.